Six Gun Productions. New media, new rules.
This is Geek News Radio. Broadcast 36 for Tuesday, April 25th, 2017. Immortal Jellyfish.
This is Geek News Radio, episode 36. I'm Fab in Isernhagen.
I'm Dave in Birmingham.
And I'm Nick in Oakland, California.
Hey, we've got Nick back. This is amazing. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to be back. It's been a long time, actually.
Yes, this was not my intent. I swear.
You have some pretty strict settings on your email filter.
Yes, I've discovered. So for everybody, I've discovered that Nick sent me an email after the last show, which I only found because I was searching for like an email exchange we had, and I explicitly I have the search filter which searches everything, which is when I found the email. Yeah.
Well, better late than never.
Yeah, I've got this. The problem is I've got this email address that I've had for 10 years now. And I just get so much spam. It's not funny. I've even given up. You know how I used to never write out my email address anywhere and just have pictures of it so the crawlers couldn't find it.
Right.
I just completely gave up on that because it was I might just tweet it now. I don't care. It's so much spam coming in anyway. I have now put you in the special VIP filter.
Oh, that's I take that as a compliment.
I should have done that from the beginning. Yeah, it's awesome to have you back on. We're gonna talk about what was this, a novelette you wrote?
Yeah.
I just figured out what that was a few days ago. I was I was on the Amazon site. I was like, this must be wrong. Isn't this like a novella? But no, apparently that's shorter than a novella.
Yeah, I don't think anybody has come up with strict definitions of, if it's this many words, it's a novel. If it's this many words, it's a novella or a novelette. I just, I went with novelette instead of novella simply because I didn't want anyone to, be sort of shocked by how short it was. I mean, it's not like it's a short story, which is why it's not called a short story, but it's, I didn't want somebody thinking that they were going to get started on an epic novel and then, 80 pages in, they're like, wait, it's done? That's it?
Yeah, especially with Kindles now, right? If you buy a book, you kind of see, but with Kindles now, you there's Dave and me read these short stories from Games Workshop, silly Space Marine bolter porn. And Dave and me have joked about, Dave, how the license agreement in the back's longer than the rest of the story.
Yes, you'll get to 95% of the way through a book and you're like, okay, cool, it's going to probably finish. Oh, wait, no, it's finished and the rest of the book is just, you promise not to pirate this and send it to all your friends for 5% of it. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, I had a funny experience actually reading the first book of The Expanse, where one of Daniel Abraham's books was included.
Oh yes,
in its entirety for free. Yeah, and I was reading it, on my e-reader, and I kept thinking, wow, there's so much left of this book, but it really feels like the story is kind of wrapping up. What the heck's going to happen? And then I got to the end, and I'm like, wow, that really felt like the end. And then I realized, because there's a whole nother book attached. That's why. Yeah, but it messed with my reading experience.
I have that too. Sometimes they have 3 chapters as well, of other books, and it's that completely drives me insane. They need to solve that. They need to not count that in the novel, in the length of the novel, or whatever. I think.
Yeah, or just give you 2 files. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not wrap it into one.
It seems like we could solve that. Yeah, so that's what we're going to talk about next. After that, we're going to, of course, talk a bit about The Expanse. For people who don't know, Nick did the Belter language in the TV show, which we talked about on, what's that, episode 6? Which
Was episode 6?
If you haven't listened to that, you need to. That, by the way, that is by far our most listened episode.
Oh, really?
Yes. But I also saw, like, on your website, you have In the Media. And I just saw before the show, I was just like stalking your website, and I saw you put us on there. Oh, that's just like I try with the podcasting I do on the site, I try to avoid this being like anything like media or journalism or anything.
It's a broad definition of media. Think of it like the original sort of meaning, which is just it's the plural of medium, which is sort of, a way of conveying information. So this
any
is
old shit.
One of many ways, yes.
Yeah, I need that because when you do real journalism stuff, I do that in my day job. It's all this due diligence stuff. I don't want to do that in my free time. I want to be able to make mistakes. Also, we drink while we do the show, so that doesn't help.
Yeah.
I guess you're not. It's like what 11 in the morning where you are.
Yeah, no, definitely not true. In fact, I think we had this very same conversation in the last episode.
Probably.
Together.
I can remember you were like in your car because they were like doing a house or something.
That's right. There was construction going on. But now I'm actually in my own house. I have my own house now.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Making languages is sounds like a good job there.
I don't. Actually, somebody once said to me, you'll never be able to buy a house if you keep being a linguist. And now I can be like, booyah!
Ha! Screw you! Actually, I could probably, like me and my wife, we could probably buy a house. I just don't want to because I don't know. I'm not ready to settle down.
Well, you know what? What convinced me was that book by Piketty, the French economist, Capital in the 20th century or whatever it is, where the central thesis is that wealth generates more income than labor.
Oh yeah.
And then I realized, wow, I got to get myself some wealth. So
that's true. Actually, this is why I very much appreciate Dave being on the show. Dave jumped in the last minute here because I'd actually planned Char, as one of our co-hosts, Char, to be on this show.
She is far more qualified.
Yeah, she's red, like she knows, and she knows languages. She would have been perfect. Maybe I still want to get both of you on the show. Maybe you can do that in the future.
Sure.
Char's on. She's doing writing for a video game Divinity Original Sin 2, and she's like in crunch. They're in crunch mode. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
Dave just jumped in. So you have to bear with us. And
bear with me.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, me too. I the only capitalist theory I ever read was Marx, and I was drunk at the time, I think.
Well, I think so were the Russians. So
yeah, so was he probably. That was a wild dude. Yeah, and then after we're going to talk about The Expanse a bit, we're going to talk about how you go about learning languages, because people have asked about that, and I checked out your website, and I just I feel envious again. You have like a page where it says how many languages you speak, and this is just crazy.
I haven't updated it in a while. I should probably downgrade a couple. I have not been as diligent lately as I really should be.
There are actually languages on there I don't know. I didn't know that were languages like Abruzzese.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah, but first, let's talk about your book, which I'm gonna take that, Dave, right? Because I read it.
Yes.
I was actually I was appreciating that it wasn't that long because I don't have much time at the moment. But then when I read it, I thought, man, that could have been it felt like you could have built it out into a novel. Actually, so maybe we should just it's like a post-apocalyptic story, right? We probably shouldn't spoiler it because it just came out.
Yeah. I mean, it just came out 2-3 days ago, so let's give people the opportunity to read
Yeah.
it themselves.
But I would say it's a story set in the post-apocalypse, which is right down my alley, and it involves zombies, like kind of, which usually isn't down my alley. But you had a very interesting twist on this, which I really liked. Yeah. So how did you get the idea to write a book? I mean, when did that come about?
Well, I've actually, I've always enjoyed writing, and there was just a point when I realized, hey, I've gotten enough exposure with everything I've done for the Expanse. Like, I've kind of got a little bit of an audience that I could actually get people who are not just my family to read something that I write.
That helps, yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, for anybody who's trying to do something creative, just getting that audience is the hardest thing. So that was what convinced me that, like, hey, maybe I should try this a bit more seriously. And the reason why I did a novelette was I actually like that length, myself as well. I mean, I think that everything nowadays in the sort of the science fiction world is like geared towards just this huge scale, and that's great. But like sometimes you want to be able to sort of get something in an afternoon of reading and not have to like commit to spending like literally weeks in this world.
And you can read this like comfortably in one sitting, which is what I did. We should say it's called The Survivors.
Yes, yeah. That is helpful. But I imagine you're also gonna.
Yes, I will put a link in. Of course, I will put a link to the Amazon page in the show notes, and also to your site and everywhere, so people will be able to find it. Are you planning? Like, I was thinking, are you planning to go back like to that world? I just thought it was like a neat world that could support more stuff.
Actually, yes. I've gotten from several people who've read it, telling me like, oh, I really want to read more about this. Like, I really like this. It's a cool world. And, without giving too much away, there's certain, this almost felt like an introduction to the world for me. Like if this was a TV show, it'd be the pilot episode where you meet the characters, but there's so much about the themes that like I really wanted to keep working with that would have required something beyond just this first story. I guess it doesn't give. I put it in the book description, so it's not too much to say that the characters end up. They survive this disease, which makes them now biologically immortal. So that means they can still be killed. If they're shot in the head, you're dead. You can't recover from that. But from pretty much anything that doesn't kill you immediately, you have like these amazing healing abilities. You can survive like dehydration. It hasn't been tested, but it's sort of, like mentioned that like, you can even theoretically like go months and months and months without any food, and you just kind of start to hibernate until you wake up. But
it seems like it solves cellular death basically, right?
Yeah. So there's all like the various issues of there's still cellular death, and in fact that's sort of the thing. Like, so most people die from this virus because the changes that it makes to their DNA they can't cope with, and so when you don't get cellular death, you get cancer. And so most people just get like uncontrollable cancer, and that kills them. But these people, it's that their cells replicate perfectly every single time, so that even if you no matter how old you get, your telomeres, which, should I explain what telomeres are?
You probably should. I know, but I'm married to a molecular biologist. So
I don't. Please continue.
Yeah. So telomeres are, and they actually weren't really known about until relatively recently, but they're at the end of chromosomes, and what they do is they're kind of like a redundancy protection to like when your cells divide, the telomeres will make sure that everything went right and that there weren't any mutations in a weird way. But the problem is that as you get older, your telomeres get shorter and shorter and shorter, and they become less and less effective until eventually they don't really function, and now you're just getting like mutations all over the place, and you end up probably dying from cancer because of that. Yeah, so that's a huge.
Yeah, so basically, when your cells replicate, your DNA gets like, how it's a helix, it gets like taken apart, and there's this thing that goes like goes along, and it always snips off the end, and this is actually how they can tell how old, like if they find like cellular matter, you can kind of tell how old the organism was, if you know the organism, like if it's human. It's human DNA. You can look at how long the telomeres are, and you can kind of tell how old somebody was. Which I recently learned. I thought that was cool.
That is very cool. I had no idea.
Yeah, and actually, it was one of those things that when they discovered it, the woman who discovered it, whose name I unfortunately don't remember, she got the Nobel Prize for it. It's that level of a discovery. So if you want to live forever, you have to solve this problem. And there actually is an organism that has solved this problem. The mighty lobster actually produces an enzyme which essentially, fixes the telomeres so that their telomeres are always at the length that they would be like of a newborn, and so their cells can keep replicating forever without ever getting damaged. And then so that's one thing that happens. I mean, there's a couple of other things that I toss in there. So, for example, like, water bears, tardigrades, they're like the indestructible life form. So they can survive in outer space, like down to 3 degrees Kelvin or something. They can survive losing like over 90% of the water in their bodies. Also, they're like immune to radiation because of a protein that they produce, which basically keeps their DNA from getting messed up from radiation. So obviously these are the sorts of things that we would also want to have incorporated if we wanted to live forever.
By the way, just Elizabeth Blackburn.
Oh yes, Elizabeth Blackburn.
She runs the Salk Institute at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But
so did you know that, or did you look it up?
I looked it up. I don't.
Okay.
I knew her name because I'm interested in this stuff because of my wife, obviously. But yeah, you, I can now. I have to, like, I'm dumb, but I know where to look things up.
I'm just bad with names. But my mom actually met her once, so that was cool. But yeah, so one of the things that I want to deal with in future sort of, returns to this world is okay. If you can live forever, I mean, what does society start to look like? I mean, right now it's, it's just like immediately after the apocalypse. And so there are a couple effects that you see, like people, no matter how old you were before, you revert to being essentially, like an adult in your prime. But, that's not necessarily like a huge change on society. On the other hand, like, let's say it's 500, fast forward 500 years in the future, and these people are still all living together. I mean, what the hell does society look like then?
That gets into Star Trek territory there, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like that. Yeah, that's cool. I must say, I really like the your grip on biological things, but I was more impressed by your weapons knowledge.
So yeah, I have a military friend, ex-military friend who, is sort of a gun nut, and I made sure that everything was completely accurate, even to the point. And I'm also just someone who, I mean, whether it's constructing a language or anything else, like I do all the research to make sure
OCD,
that, like, yeah,
geek, so whatever you do,
Yeah, I even went to, like the New York Police Department website and found like, okay, what weapons are they actually, issued, so that if you were to go into an abandoned police station looking for guns, like what would you find? You wouldn't necessarily find AK-47s.
Yep. Except everybody seems to have them in the post-apocalypse, but yeah.
And that's one that's always bugged me, because like, okay, if it's the post-apocalyptic Russia or the Middle East, then yeah, for sure you're going to find lots of AK-47s, but there aren't really that many AK-47s in America.
I was just that impressed when some guy pulled out like he had double deagles, and then it wasn't like the normal model. It's like the long rifle, long barrel one.
Yeah, that was actually, we had a specific discussion about, like that exact scene, because I think I had chosen something slightly differently. And then he sent me like a YouTube video. He's like, no, this is what you want. You want like the biggest handgun that you can find.
Ridiculous for that character as well. Yeah, you're ridiculously big.
Yeah. Well, I liked the fact that like the sort of happy-go-lucky, always cracking jokes, character ends up being the one with the biggest guns.
Yeah. Did you? One question: were you at all inspired by Fallout in writing this?
I have not played Fallout.
Interesting, because there's some really interesting parallels. Like for one thing, the zombie thing. Like Fallout doesn't really have zombies. It has but it's like a conceit kind of. It's not a virus, but it kind of works like. And then the other thing was like the way the post-apocalypse work. Of course, in Fallout, it's a little bit more stereotypical, like everything's destroyed and, all people are dicks. But it's like when they go to New Jersey, that's kind of like Fallout was. When in the story they go over to Jersey and like they're all dicks there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I actually used to live in New York, and this is the reason why I picked New York as a setting, because I know it well enough that I could, really accurately describe stuff. And I mean, the other option was San Francisco, but I wanted New York for. Actually, it's funny how one small detail, ends up, when making a decision about that ends up causing, huge effects. I really wanted the main character to, like fall asleep into a coma in the summer and then wake up in the winter and it's snowing. And in California, if you fall asleep in the summer and you wake up in the winter, it doesn't really there's no change.
Yeah,
you couldn't tell. So it never snows here. So I went with New York. And then the thing is, like a big cultural thing in New York, and I can also say this because I went to college in New Jersey, so I really know both Jersey and New York City. And there's this divide between like people who are living in New York City and then quote unquote bridge and tunnel people who come over for like the weekend to party, and they either come over, from Jersey or Long Island or Staten Island, so either a bridge or a tunnel. And then they're the ones that like get just really shit-faced and causing problems, and they that show Jersey Shore.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like Jersey Shore people in Manhattan, and of course you can imagine how Manhattan people react to the Jersey Shore people.
Yeah, it's kind of like on an earlier show, one of our co-hosts, Mike, who is from Denmark, always goes on about the Swedish people coming over on the booze cruises.
Yes, I've heard about the booze cruises. So I think that they go to Finland too.
Yeah, it sounds a bit like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Except Swedish people get really, really drunk. It's but in a different way. Like they get like quietly drunk. It's not like not like New Jersey people who start picking fights and whatnot.
The funny thing is, as you say about like the city, because I always wanted to write a novel. I studied humanities subject, so I think everybody who does that kind of wants to be a writer anyway. And I always wanted to write a post-apocalyptic story, and mine would have been set in Bonn because that's what I know. Either that or the Ruhr area. But I always toyed with the idea of having like a post-apocalypse story in Bonn, because either there's no English stories where it's like set in Germany either. Like, and if there was, it would be Berlin. But like having like a town nobody knows always appealed to me. But I do envy you. Like I always lose the impetus. I tried to write something. Maybe I should have, like, maybe my mistake was that I always wanted to write a novel. I should have aimed for a novelette.
Well, it actually ended up, I mean, I've written some unpublished novels, and actually the novelette took longer because I had to be super succinct, like I had to cut out a lot of stuff. And so I would write something, and then in editing being like, well, I don't really need that and it doesn't fit, so I have to take it out.
Do you have like a goal of like a maximum length you wanted?
Yeah, I aimed for 10,000 words, and even then it was about 10,500. So
that's very tight. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I would, one can, I could tell that, like, I could definitely tell that, like, it's when I read it, it felt like you had a lot more stuff, like, or maybe also because I wanted to know more. Like, I would have been really happy with it just like going on or stuff. I don't know. It felt a bit like that. But then, yeah, it's I know from being like, I don't write novels or anything, but like I work on a magazine. It's the same thing. Like, getting stuff down is the hardest thing. Like, if you spec an article for 4 pages, and then like they tell you, oh, you only have 3. This is like, that's the worst thing about writing there is. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that I take that as a positive, though, that that you, even though it's very short, that you still get a sense like there's a lot more going on. I mean, that to me is a victory, because even if it's short, I don't want it to seem shallow.
No, it would definitely not shallow. I would say if I had a criticism, I'd say there is a bit too much depth. Like you could have probably filed off a little bit more. It just feels like, I don't know. It's hard to describe. It just feels like, how it's a bit like, you said it's like a pilot episode for a TV show, and I think that's a very good, very, very succinct thing. Like, if you have a TV, in the old times when they actually did pilots, and they made a pilot for a TV show, and sometimes there's 5% too much content in there. I don't think it's
too many notes.
Yeah, I don't think it's as bad. Like, it's worse for a TV show, because with a book it's actually not that bad, because you can, like, you pick the pace you read it at, so that doesn't matter that much. On a TV show, it's worth. I definitely think you should go back to it. You have stuff there. You have potential that hasn't been realized. It's not so much the open end. It's more like there's so much happening in that time span that it is a smidge unrealistic. If you know what I mean. It's like between him waking up and figuring out what's going on, and then there's the big adventure thing at the end. It feels like you wouldn't immediately go there if you were that character, if you know what I mean.
Right.
But it's like it's not like that breaks anything. Like, because you, as a reader, you want him to go there because you want to see what's happening. So,
well, that was one of the challenges of writing it, was making sure that everything felt motivated. So, and like, it was definitely something that I worked on. When it comes to so much happening in such a short period of time, I would argue, though, that when the world has ended and most people are dead, the rules of normal experience are slightly different.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, yeah, true. And also, if you kind of come to grips with the fact that you're biologically immortal, you'd take more risks. That's the thing I got away. That really worked for me, because it felt like the main character was taking more risks than you would, but then, he can get shot and he won't die. You mean, so that worked.
That was the other thing that was challenging, was like, okay, I mean, I don't want to make them Superman, because that's boring when you have like the one weakness, and then
that's like that Superman movie where him and Zod, they could just keep fighting for 40 minutes. What's that, Man of Steel? Oh god, that's so boring. There's like no stakes. They just keep hitting each other and they don't hurt.
Right, or like Dragon Ball Z, where you're powerful.
Oh, don't diss that. Dave's gonna get mad.
That's fair.
No, that's my favorite show.
It's not my favorite show. It's highly flawed.
Yeah.
So if you had like 20 pages of just going screaming, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I really should have put in a reference in there somehow of like I don't know, like somebody making a joke about like, oh, your power level is over 9,000 or something like that.
Some joke about the length of their telomeres.
Right, yeah.
Telomere puns. I have to ask you one question. Are the acknowledgements like in Latin in the final book?
Oh, no.
Okay. Oh, good. Because Nick was so nice, and like we planned to do the show quite a bit earlier, and he provided me with a early review copy, where like the acknowledgements and the foreword are just Latin, and because I completely suck at Latin, I couldn't tell if this was just like, it wasn't lorem ipsum, but I guess it was alternative lorem ipsum, right?
So that was my book designer. He does that as filler space holder for everything that he does. But I guess it's pretty funny in my particular case, because people might actually assume that he knows Latin. I thought
like, okay, when I read the acknowledgments at the end, I thought, well, that must be placeholder. But like at the forward, I thought like, he's that crazy. He speaks like 50 languages. He's just gonna mess with us. I was completely convinced you were like thanking your mom, just like in Latin. I had no idea. By the way, speaking of the book design, I gotta say, this book looks bloody awesome. It has some really good typography, and it just looks great.
Yeah, it's I'll have to send along a physical copy, because the paperback is just fantastic. I mean the chromosomes of the keratos are like actually wrapped around the spine. I mean, wow! It was the designer he. So I've introduced you to my friend Elliot Pepper.
Last year. Except I didn't notice. Yeah. But no, I'm gonna try to get him on the show. He's a writer.
He's a great interview. It will be, you'll enjoy talking to him very much. But anyway, he introduced me to the book designer Kevin Kane, and Kevin just did a really great job. I mean, Elliot said that it's the best thing that he's ever seen Kevin do, and I would, so I got to take advantage of that, because as much as people say don't judge a book by its cover, everybody judges a book by its cover.
Well, I don't actually do that so much. I open it up and judge it by the typography. I actually do that, and you completely win that.
So I do get to take some credit in that. How like as the chapters go along, the jellyfish emerges more and more.
Yep.
Yeah. So that was that was not the jellyfish emerging more and more, but that came out as a brainstorming thing between me and him, and it was great because like a lot of the times you have to pay someone for the type, the page setting, and then you have to pay someone else for the cover. But Kevin actually did both, and so he did a really good job of, making it all work together.
I'm immediately in love with the book when I open it up and they tell you what the fonts are.
Ah, yes.
I'm in love with that because I'm a font nut. I collect fonts. I love them. I want to know what the font is. Then I look it up. I look up the history of the font or whatever. Yeah, so I completely love that. It's a great book, and I gotta say, people should buy it. It's like what, $3 on Amazon.
Yeah,
Which
$3
is like-
for the digital copy, $7 for the print copy.
It
So
sounds like it's even worth getting the print copy. That's
yeah.
because
I mean, I get the same royalties either way. So
That was going to be my question. Which way do you prefer buying?
yeah, okay, yeah, good.
well, if you get the print copy, then eventually I can sign it for you.
Yeah, that's actually Oh, definitely to do that.
And I think Amazon actually has this this deal where, I mean, I set it so that like if you buy the print copy, then you for like only $1 more you can get the digital copy. You know, I don't know, but
Yeah, for me, it's like I have this thing. Like I love books. I love print books. Absolute book geek. But I've had this in this place I live. I had this bug infestation, and I have. It's horrible. They're like silverfish, and they're silverfish, and they get really big. And I was like, normally you can kill them. Like you put toxins everywhere and you kill them. And these guys are like really hard to kill. And I read actually last year, I read a news story about there's an animal that looks like silverfish, just they get bigger, and they are, I mean they're related to them, but they're not like that closely related as you would think when you look at them. They're like they weren't known for very long because people thought they were just silverfish, but they're like a special kind that gets bigger, and they love libraries. Like they're a huge problem for libraries. They eat like every normal silverfish really like wet, like they come out of drains and stuff.
right.
And if you get a really dry environment, they die.
Right.
And so normally those don't survive in libraries because like a temperature controlled like book storage place, they will die. But these other ones, they get bigger. I mean, these things, they live like 16 years, and they get like, I don't know, 100 children every 2 weeks. They're horrible. They've been eating my books. I hate these fuckers.
No.
Like I put all my books in like in plastic bags and put like toxin on there, like tons of it. So I killed all of them in the books, but they survive like everywhere. Like I live in the on the top, like I live on 4th floor at the very top, and they come from downstairs. Like you can't get rid of them. Like I read in this news article, that they say like it's impossible to get rid of them because they'll just migrate to your neighbor's flat and then they come back. So I've really started to become a fan of like ebooks. Like I started to become a fan of it when I moved 3 times in a year.
Right.
But now it's like at least those fuckers can't eat like my Kindle books. Fucking hate those things.
Until they evolve to eat electronics.
Oh god. That's the next story. They'll become digital. They'll become cyber pests. Oh god.
Yeah, I think that we already have those.
And it's really bad because like I have signed books and shit, you know?
Yeah,
Stuff that I've had really good memories with, like, you know, when Dave and me went like to Black Library and had like I've got like this upside down book.
Oh, the upside down book.
Misprint.
Yeah.
Is it David? It's David Geimer's, isn't it?
Yeah, it's upside down and back to front.
It's
And then,
it's up here.
and then when he was signing it like right at the end of the day, and he was very dehydrated and very tired, and he just looked at it and went, "Why is my book upside down?"
Yeah, and then he was nice. I bought it, so he signed his like Gotrek and Felix book from David Geimer, and he was like really nice. He was like, "I'm gonna give you a new one."
And we're like,
And
no,
no, this will be worth something at some point.
no, because I was reading it on a train, so obviously to everyone else I'm like reading backwards and upside down. Like, I look like I don't know what I'm
Right,
doing.
it's also backwards. Yeah, that's it. Like
Yeah, it's so good.
So I
Wasn't-
love books.
Didn't that happen to George W. Bush once? He was sitting with a bunch of preschoolers, and
Yes.
like the book he was holding was upside down.
Yeah.
So maybe it was just misprinted, and we misjudged him this entire time.
He actually knew exactly what he was
Well,
doing.
you kind of feel for like I always thought Bush was horrible, but these days he Trump makes him look good.
Bring back those days.
When you think about it, though, I mean, and I guess we shouldn't get too far into politics, but I mean, in a sense, though, George W. Bush was scarier because he actually, managed to like get things done because he was so fuddy-duddy that like nobody took him too seriously, and so he passed a bunch of legislation and started wars. And with Trump, everybody's on guard, and you can't get away with things as much.
That's true. I hope you're right. I hope you're right. Speaking of politics, let's get into the Expanse. So everybody buy that book, The Survivor's Grave.
Oh, I
Links in the show
had
notes.
one more question.
Oh, sorry.
Sure.
Yes.
You decide you want to write a novella. How did you go about getting it published? Did you write it all first and then go to a publisher, or what was the process like?
So yeah, I decided with this one to do it, independently. So basically, just publishing it through Amazon because I wanted to time it with the finale of The Expanse. Because
so that wasn't an accident. I was thinking.
No, it was very much on purpose because I just get the most social media attention while The Expanse is running. And then, I was able to sneak in a tweet today like, hey, if you're missing The Expanse, like, why don't you read my book while you're waiting for season 3?
That's perfect.
So, yeah. And the thing is, like, if you go with traditional publishing, it can take like up to 2 years. So my plan is, I'll probably have a manuscript that I'll maybe shop around and see if I can't get any good offers on it. But in the meantime, just self-publish, because also I get 70% of the royalties on these books, as opposed to if you publish with one of the major publishers.
Yeah.
You usually only get 10%. So I literally need to sell 1/7 of the copies to make the same amount of money.
Yeah. And were you your own editorial then? Like you decided it was done and it was done. No one at Amazon.
No, I paid. I mean, I had multiple rounds of people reading like developmental edits, and then I paid a professional line and copy editor so that it because I wanted it to be like as a polished product, and she caught lots of typos and other
one can
things.
tell that is a well edited book. There's like the copy I had. There's one mistake I found where like a sentence kept repeating. But
yes, so that was found. That was
I didn't tell you about it because by the time when I found it was like 2 days before the book came out. I was like, nah.
yeah.
If that's
too late.
still
No,
in
but
there,
I mean,
just let it go.
But even after editing, you have to have proofing because that was a printing mistake.
Right? Yeah, you always have to. Yeah, but I could tell it's really well edited. Like I can tell these things having read Games Workshop shit.
Yes. Having experienced the other end of the spectrum.
Well, I have to do this stuff myself, so
Yeah. Well, and nobody wants to slog through. Like, I mean, if you're paying for it, and it's a book that you just want to sit down and enjoy, it takes you out of it if you keep seeing typos and things like that.
Well, it takes me out of it. Some people don't mind, but yeah, some people notice. This is people that are OCD.
Well, it definitely takes me out of it. I remember, and this one actually, this one made it all the way to like final copy. I mean, it was in something that I purchased like 2 years after publication, so nobody noticed it except for me. But have you heard of Patrick Rothfuss? Yeah. So in The Name of the Wind, it's a very minor thing, but it just bugged the heck out of me. And like I still like the book, but it took me 5 minutes. I had to put the book down, and then I picked it back up and tried not to look at this mistake. There's a character who, so if you're the perspective is from, like the point of view main character, and then there's another character who's being sort of, like showing up for the first time, and now you as the reader, because you're taking the point of view of this main character, you don't know that person's name until someone mentions it, or something, right? Like that name, that information has to be introduced before the narrator can start using that name in the narration. And it showed up about like 2 paragraphs early, this name, and I was like, who's this person? What are they, like, where did they come from? And then I realized, oh, it's this character that they're meeting for the first time. And obviously in edits, something got cut, and then they missed that this name was still there. And I was like, damn.
Classic editing mistake. In Germany, since you like languages, in Germany we call that Redigierleiche. So redigieren is like this, like proofreading.
Right.
And Leiche is corpse. So it's a proofreading. It's like it happens a lot when you change sentences around. And you have a sentence written one way, and then you edit it and you write it. And then it's like still the first half of the old sentence still there. But because you yourself changed that, like you're blind to that. You can read that 10 times, you won't see it. You have to have somebody else. This is why in magazines you have, a colleague who's never read the text before read that, because they'll pick it out at the first. And this is the same thing. Like Rothfuss, he would have never picked that up because he knew the name of the character all along. So this is just something you can't pick up.
And I will say that in terms of the difference, like difficulty between writing a full-length novel and a novelette, the editing process of a novelette is so much easier because if you change one thing, you have to change it throughout. Yeah, that's a lot easier to do when you only have 10,000 words as opposed to 100,000 words.
I have. Have you read The Dark Tower by Stephen King?
No, I haven't.
You should. I'm not a Stephen King fan generally, but those books are great. And he has in the news version he has a really cool, very long foreword where he explains how he wrote the book. Like the first book he wrote, like the first Dark Tower books, is basically the first book he ever wrote, and it's horrible. He says so himself. So if you buy it now, there's a new version. They completely reworked it, and this is like the Dark Tower is basically ties all his other books and all his other worlds together, and it's like this linchpin of his whole career. And he had an assistant. Oh, there's a book you can buy it. I have it. It's called The Dark Tower Concordance. It's like basically the assistant's research notes to the stories, and he explains how he had to have that because when they re-edited stuff, he had to take all this other stuff into account, like not only from like the 6 other books, but also like all his other books. Because there's characters from other books turning up, and that editing must have been a bloody nightmare. Jesus Christ!
I cannot imagine. I really can't.
Yeah, this is like when you actually need assistance.
Well, I've heard that even George R.R. Martin, like there's someone that because he has so many minor characters, right? That he'll often forget details that he has mentioned, and so he actually has someone who is in charge of making sure that, if I don't know, Gonzo is dark haired and, has blue eyes, that every further mention of Gonzo makes sure that, he still has dark hair and blue eyes and that he's from such and such a place. Because when you have thousands of these characters, you're never going to remember where they're all from or what they look like.
Yeah, this is why, when they invent a language on a TV show, they need to pay somebody to
exactly
to have
what a segue. What a segue.
Yeah, how's that going, by the way? I haven't seen the season finale yet, but I really like the second season. And I don't know, am I wrong, or is there a lot more Belter in there?
It's different. So in the first season, there were a couple places where there were actually like full dialogues. But they're no more full dialogues, but then in other ways it's getting incorporated more and more. And actually there was an epiphany that they had, and I mean, I could have told them this, but they realized, oh, the fans actually really like this, and
No shit.
It causes, like, it gives people, like, it makes it a more immersive experience. And it's like, yeah, that's why you paid me in the first place.
And
like,
it's really memeable, and it creates a brand.
yeah, like that. All of a sudden, you have a way, like, fans can just pop in a couple words to, make it that it's about Belter and that it's their thing as a community. And you can't do that as easily if you don't. I mean, language is one of the like most instinctual ways that people mark group identity.
Yeah, it creates communities. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So they at first, they were, in the first couple of episodes, they were pulling away, and then like, oh, we better go back and, in post-production, like the audio, like put more of it back in. And I'm like, that's good.
Interesting. There's people on Twitter like speaking Belter, and I'm like, I wish I could do that. I just can't. Like, I just can't. My brain, like, I come home from work and I can't. I try to learn a language, but I keep my. I have a new boss at work, who's a cool guy who's also watched The Expanse, and every morning when I see him first, I call him Boss Man. It makes him laugh every time. Little things like that. I know, maybe it's just like it feels like in the second season it's more flavorful. Like, there's lots of, like, also accent stuff,
Yeah.
Like, just,
I mean, so the stuff with the actors, I don't actually work with them on that because I'm in, California, and they shoot in Toronto, and because of the, Canadian protectionism, it's not very easy for me to get there and work there. So I don't have that. I mean, I do work with, like, a couple of them sort of on the side for fun, like doing stuff on Twitter. But when it comes to, like, what actually shows up on the screen, like, I make recordings of pure Belter, but, like, that doesn't show up too often anymore anyway. So a lot of the accent stuff goes to the accent coach, and then also just, actors who are doing their best. But
yeah. The Diogo is becoming quite a meme, isn't he?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's a good guy. I've actually gotten quite drunk with Andrew in LA.
He seems really fun. I mean, he was just like a side character in the first season, and he had a massive big thing, and in this season with Miller and stuff.
And you know what's funny is, like, in person, he's actually, like, kind of shy and, like, super analytical about everything. Like, he really likes to think he would never do anything as spontaneous as, like, what Diogo does.
Well, he's a bloody good actor. He makes you, he convinces you that he is that way.
Yeah.
I'm really sad that just, like, Miller's gone now. Well, he's not completely gone. Spoilers, but I just, like, oh god, that beginning of that season I liked so much, where he was just, like, chugging that bomb along on arrows. That was so good.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite characters for sure. And I mean, I do wish that there had been more opportunities for him to speak Belter, but they didn't want to push it.
Well,
also, I've heard that he's a very particular actor. Do you know that he never wears shoes?
He doesn't?
He doesn't wear shoes.
Awesome.
So, like, it makes shooting a little complicated sometimes because, you can't do shots which show his feet.
That's like Peter Cushing in Star Wars. That's amazing. Wow. Cool. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it kind of fits the character. Like, if you read the books, he's not the most belter, is he? He's he's weird.
No, he's not.
Now I have to watch it again and just keep watching for his feet. There's a scene where he's in the apartment where he doesn't wear shoes. I did notice that.
Well, I mean, so there it was a perfect excuse for him to not be wearing shoes because he's inside an apartment. So
Awesome.
little did you know, he didn't actually take any shoes off.
Wow. See, this is you can't like little inside info like that. I live for that. This is just like, when we watch The Expanse next, I'm gonna tell my wife, that he never wears shoes, and she's gonna be really annoyed. It's like I just want to watch the fucking show. I don't give a damn. This is like when they CGI'd Peter Cushing for Rogue One.
Mm-hmm.
They actually went through. They made the model from episode 4, and they had to go through all the old Peter Cushing movies to find find him walking, like to have footage of him from the knees down, because apparently on the set he wore slippers because they gave him these riding boots that were really uncomfortable, and he wasn't a young man. So he just downright refused to wear them, so they had to change all the framing and all the sets so you would never see him from his knees down.
That's really funny.
That's the stuff I keep telling my wife when you watch it, and she kicks me in the balls.
Well, and I when I was a kid, I always used to love watching for, the times when like the bloopers, like the little things, like, Chewbacca goes into the elevator with his hands, like behind his back, and then he comes out with them in front of him.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's a classic. Actually, there's remarkable little of that in The Expanse. I've noticed. I mean, there's always little things like when they shoot a scene and then like somebody's like posture is just different. I mean that always happens. But I'm generally really surprised by that show, like how good the CGI, especially the CGI, is how good that gotten in the second season.
Well, they that's why it takes so long. I mean, from the end of filming, I mean, like the period of post production takes way longer than anything else, and they're still working on post production. Like they're not even done with post production on like the later episodes.
Yeah, when
like,
the first one,
yeah.
I follow the VFX. Obviously, I follow all of them on Twitter, but it's like I like the stuff they tweet about that. I actually like one of my favorite things about the shows, like that they live, like the actors and people live tweet the episodes, and you can actually talk to people about it. It's really cool.
It's a good community.
It's like I really like how they improved like the pacing in the second season. Like I really liked. I love the first season. I love the pacing. I love that whole like noir detective thing about it.
Yeah.
But I know people who bounced off it because if you have to hang in there till like episode 7, whatever it is, when they like repeat the story. I think they do that really well. But like lots of people bounced off before that because they were like, I don't know what the hell's going on. I just like. The second season, it definitely has improved that. It's like the way that started, like the first episode was just like the first 2 episodes just blow your mind.
Yeah, I mean it's a combination of 2 difficult things. I mean, one is anytime that you have a science fiction world and you don't have like a title scroll, you have to like figure out, okay, what the hell is this new world all about? Like who's doing what, et cetera, which you never have to deal with if it's just, a contemporary drama. Like, what Russia is and what China is, United States, et cetera. But like, if it's the future, all bets are off. And so then if on top of that, you're using a pacing that like most people nowadays are not used to, then it's just going to be, a double whammy of, discomfort.
Yeah, but I think they, I don't know, but it feels like the second season has gotten a lot more traction. Like a lot more people are watching it now.
Yeah, I think it's also just, a natural buildup of, word of mouth. Like you had people from last season who, a lot of people also, I think, just won't watch something until they're sort of convinced that like, okay, there's going to be more of it. I mean, if you
Yeah, I
watch
know.
one,
Yeah, it's the Firefly
Yeah.
effect. You're like, oh god, it's gonna end, and I'm gonna be disappointed.
right, or just that like, oh, it's a sign of there's something good here if they've signed it to a second season and actually made it. I mean, I
Yeah.
won't deny that. Like for me too, like if I'm just going through, TV shows that I don't really know that much about, and I see one has only one season and the other has like 6 seasons, then I'll assume that, well, there must be some reason why they're going 6. If everything else is equal, I'll probably go to the one that has more seasons.
Yeah, I badgered about 15 colleagues into watching this. Even before you had I think I got like 8 to 10 people watching this before you had a way to legally watch it over in Europe.
Yeah,
I just
It
guess
got
it's
a lot easier once season 1 was on.
Oh yeah, once it's on Netflix, it's just like that helped a lot over here.
Watch The Expanse, it's on Netflix,
Yeah.
and then okay, cool, fine, it's easy now. And so they did.
Yeah.
That's
Well, you'll have to badger all your colleagues to read The Survivors, and it is already upfront legally available.
That is great. I will
I just bought
that.
it, so
Dave's like buying stuff on the show again.
that's a common theme of me buying books that people tell me to buy on the podcast. It's a recurring segment.
I'll do that. I'll annoy people. It's a thing I do anyway.
With creating the Belter language, obviously you made a hell of a lot of it for the last season. How has supporting that changed with the second season? Are you just now adding to it in sort of ways that they need, like we need a bit to describe this or do this sort of conversation? Like, how involved are you now?
Yeah, I mean it's like a lot of the groundwork was done even before season 1 started production. I mean, I had to have the grammar and the basics of like the phonology and I had the grammar, the phonology, and then like the basics of the vocabulary and how word production would happen even before doing anything, because it was the only way to make it consistent, because I didn't want to go back later and then change something which then required changing everything else. I mean, I had to do that before I was going to actually put anything down that was now officially canon on the show. So it's been the same process for the most part with season 1 and season 2, which is that whenever they need something, I will come up with it as necessary. I will make up a new word.
You'll get drunk and then is that how it works?
No, I usually
You actually explained that last time, I think.
Yeah, it actually, like, there are a couple times where I've been drunk and come up with words, specifically drinking pirates cocktails. But it is a little bit easier to to do it when I'm sober, just because like there's a lot to keep track of.
Yeah, I know. This is like writing. It's like when you're drunk, you think you're good, and then you read it when you're sober, and you're like, maybe not.
Yeah. No, my friend Elliot, his MO, we've talked about this, is so you drink in order to have like the crazy experiences, which then you will drink coffee to write about.
Right. Okay. Maybe that's why I've been doing it wrong.
Yeah. So don't do it backwards. Weird things can happen.
Okay, that's public service announcement. GNR right away. Yeah. That you need to. I think I told you this before. You need a word for journalist.
Oh yeah, I do.
That's on your to-do list. I need to put that in my Twitter bio.
Yeah. Okay. I will do that. I get a lot of requests.
Yeah, I know.
And it's like I don't want to be like, oh, I'm so big and important, but
take your time. It has to be a good word.
Well, actually, it's true though that sometimes like if I let it mull around a bit, like I end up coming up with a better word than, you know, if I just try and pull something out of my ass.
Yeah,
Um,
it shouldn't force it.
Yeah, the one that I did recently that I really liked, because you know they needed something for a promo, and so they asked me, you know, to translate something, and one of the words was like, you know, armor, as in like Bobby's body armor, and so I was thinking, okay, well, I don't want to. I mean, I want to come up with something that is a little bit more challenging for people, because like if I just make it English or Germanic based, like everybody will get it pretty quickly. At least the people who are like hardcore, you know, belter people on the Twitterverse. And so I did my normal MO, which is okay. I go on to Google Translate and I just see, hey, what is this word in a couple different languages, and which one of these then sounds the coolest? So it ended up being Yingding, and it comes from the Chinese word for hardtop, like a hardtop car. And I just liked it because of, you know, first you have like this sort of the etymology of, okay, it's this slang thing that, like, you know, they're sort of, you know, I mean, that's the kind of way that like soldiers, or, you know, like people who are sailors or whatever will just make slang about like stuff, you know, like, oh, you know, that what a hard top, you know. But then you know, I like the fact that it rhymes, that you get that kind of like doubling there, because I remember early on, this is one of the things that Ty Frank actually said that he wanted to incorporate into Book Belter, and there was just this kind of like repetitive sounds. So, you know, I do that as often as I can, just because, you know, I know that that's something that he sort of wanted, and so I'm trying to honor his request.
It's a bit like what's that? Is it
onomatopoeia?
When something sounds like what's happening,
right? Yeah,
like
so
it sounds like a bullet bouncing off the armor.
You know, you weren't the first one to say that it sounds like an onomatopoeia, but that works. There may be more, but the one that I can think of off the top of my head that's a good belter onomatopoeia is tung, and it means like, you know, like a shot, because that's kind of what, like, it's like, you know, bang, except bang in, you know, in space, when you have these guns that are, you know, like zero kickback, and, you know, like there's tons of metal everywhere, so the sound resonates very strangely. And actually with that one, I had a discussion with the sound guy, like the guy who, you know, is in charge of doing all the audio editing, because he's thought a lot about how things would sound in that kind of environment. So he was able to contribute.
I think that's also this. By the way, that's an area I really like about the show as well. There's really good. I mean, there's like a very. I'm very sensitive to this because I'm not a native speaker, an English native speaker. So sometimes for me it's hard to understand things, especially when there are accents involved and stuff. And they have that balance of, it needs to sound natural, you know, when they're in a public place. There's lots of people talking in the background. It needs to sound like that space, but you also need to be able to tell what people are saying, which is compounded, like, which is made worse when there's people like speaking belter, right? And and they do that really, really well. That actually occurred to me. Another show I've watched recently, which I really like, is Taboo, which has like African, some kind of African language in there. But they have like this. People are mumbling all the time. Half the time I can't even speak English. I can't understand. But that's kind of their MO. But I really liked how they did that on the Expanse. And I don't know how you feel about this. I mean, you know what they're saying when they speak Belter. I guess most of the time.
Well, sometimes I will forget. You know, like what exactly I put in there, because I mean, you know, when I hand something over from that time to, you know, when it's out, I mean, already, like, you know, half a year or more has passed, and so I will not always remember. Like, there are definitely times where, like, I have to go back and pull up the script while I'm watching the episode, because people are asking me, "Oh, what did they say?" And I have to be like, I don't want to say I don't know. So I have to go and actually get the script. Also, because sometimes, you know, they'll say it in a way that is not exactly how I imagined it would be spoken.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, I don't always know what they're saying.
I do like their accents, though. I like the way they do that. I don't know what the whatever who's the, damn, I forgot his fucking name. The OPA guy, not
Dawes.
not Dawes, right? I don't know what the hell that accent is, but it's fucking awesome.
Well, I mean, it's yeah, I think it's something that he came up with to a certain degree on his own, in addition to you know, the coaching. And he promised that he would do something for me, and you know, I'm not pushing him. But, you know, I wish that it would be sooner rather than later, and that is that I don't know if you happened to see that I actually at one point wrote a poem in Belter.
Yes, on World Poetry Day.
Yes, on World Poetry Day. I didn't realize it was World Poetry Day, actually. It just sort of worked out.
You're on brand by accident.
Yeah. And he actually agreed to recite it in Belter. But he hasn't done it yet.
You can't push him via this show, I don't think. I don't think we have enough. Jared Harris actually is the actor.
Yeah, we don't have the reach.
I had to look his name up. I always thought he was Irish. I thought that accent was Irish, but what the fuck do I know? I know nothing.
It sounds a lot more like Cockney to me than it does like Irish.
You're much more qualified. I'm watching Peaky Blinders right now, and that whatever that Brummy, that's just driving me insane.
That's just life. I live this.
Yeah.
Has anyone said Boston on that yet?
No,
B-O-S-T-I-N.
I don't think that was a
Wow.
thing in the 20s.
I bet it was. It's got to be a thing. It's apparently not a 21st century thing, and me trying to revive it is like quite cheesy. But who cares?
What is this? I'm not following.
So there's some Brummy slang from Birmingham called Boston, Bostin, and it sort of just means good. If something's good, you say Boston. And the kind of etymology of it, I'm not convinced by, because it sounds rubbish. But it's a thing that kind of like older Brummie people say. So when younger Brummie people hear me, someone not from Birmingham, saying it, they get a little confused.
Wiktionary, the fountain of all knowledge, says etymology possibly related to boast or bost, to break.
Yeah, it doesn't follow for the context.
West Midlands, great, excellent. R, that's Boston, R, kid. What the fuck?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm just looking up the etymology for the city Boston, which I guess was a town in Lincolnshire.
That's what I thought he was saying when he said that for the first time.
Yeah, but apparently the name is to originally be Botolph's Stone, probably the name of some Anglo-Saxon landowner.
Language is so weird.
It is. It is.
It is so weird. Speaking of language, another segue. We had many requests last time. You told us that how many languages you speak and stuff, and people were asking, how the hell do you do that? Is there a way you can basically high level encapsulate how you go about studying a language?
So,
I'm not at all putting you on the spot here.
well, I would say that I mean it helps to have a background in linguistics, but it is not absolutely necessary. The major thing is pattern recognition, because there are, I mean, tons and tons and tons of patterns in languages, which make things a lot easier. And also that the people who claim to know a lot about languages, in terms of like people who make textbooks for schools and, are in charge of like the academy of whatever, often don't really know what the hell they're talking about. And so if you listen to them, you'll think they'll say something is a pattern, but actually it's not, or they'll say something is irregular when actually there's a perfectly reasonable explanation.
Having tried learning French in school, I'm with you 100%. Yes.
Yeah. So if you can just sort of get past all of that, then after that. I mean, I do like to start with a good academic grammar. Then that will take you through a lot of that stuff already. And I know that a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't like grammar," but again, what they probably have in mind is what they've been taught in school as to what grammar is, and not what grammar really is. And all that is just the regular rules of a language. And
which I guess sometimes is like, it's like, I don't know, when you learn it, like looking at English, it can seem like there's not so much regular things there, like to me English feels very irregular, to be honest.
Well, so that's the other thing is, I mean, where the patterns are in one language is not necessarily where they're going to be in another language. So, for example, English a long time ago lost most of its cases. Now we're only left with 2, and one of them isn't really a case in the same way that cases are in other languages. And I'm referring to the the genitive, like apostrophe S, as in like Bob's book, because in English you can move around. So like the man on the corner's book. But anyway, so because of that, if you're sort of expecting regularity to appear, like at the ending of a word, and
because
that's
I'm German and we do everything right. We have many cases.
Because in German, that's where it would be. Then it's going to seem really strange and irregular that English doesn't have that. But in other ways, I mean, it's perfectly normal. And a lot of it is also that people get really mixed up with, orthography, and they think that orthography is grammar, and it's not. I mean, orthography is just a visual representation of a spoken medium, and it's completely sort of... it's
pretty arbitrary, isn't it?
It's pretty arbitrary. It's entirely arbitrary. I mean, and even if you want to have sort of more regular representations, it's still arbitrary that like one line stands for one sound and another line stands for another sound.
So this is like we were talking on a recent show. I was talking about Worcester sauce, and that
right.
Germans, they don't get Worcester. They think it's Worcestershire.
Right.
And, that's, I mean, we get hung up on that because in German, at least it seems to me like that, how words are written and how they are pronounced is much closer together than how that would be in English.
Well, so here's the thing. Actually, there's a big advantage in English to the fact that our spellings are not really phonetic. And an example to think of would actually be kind of like Chinese, where you have several different languages. I mean, they're fully fledged languages, even if the government doesn't want them to be considered different languages. But they're different languages that can use the same writing system because
like Mandarin and Cantonese, I guess, something like that.
Yeah, like Mandarin and say Sichuanese. That they can use the same writing system because enough is common with the grammar that in terms of the vocabulary, even if, and I don't know enough Chinese to know actually what the word for dog is in Mandarin and what the word for dog is in Sichuanese. But let's say it's like dog and hund, but you have one character that is common for both. Then great. Now, if one person's writing a letter to the other person, in the writer's mind, it may be dog, and in the
I think
mind, it may be hunt, but they'll both understand.
Yeah. Right.
And so for English, because we have just enormous differences in accents, I mean, ranging from like, America to Australia to like, all the places in the UK. If you tried to phonetically spell, each of those out, nobody would be able to write to each other. It would be very confusing. Whereas if you have this one orthography, which kind of doesn't make sense for anybody, then at least it equally doesn't make sense for anybody and everybody can use it.
That's an excellent point.
And I guess your brain isn't so tied to, like, words being written like they sound, like a German would be. And then if you have to learn another language, it's like, what the fuck? Does this make no sense?
Right. It's also, I mean, I definitely think it does factor in with when we're borrowing words from other languages. We don't have to spell them differently than how they are. And you find this in other languages, like where, and actually it's probably the reason why this happened in the first place to a certain degree is because English was just borrowing like crazy and you're just not changing the spelling from whatever it was originally.
Except sometimes, like when you turn around the E and the I in Wiener or something.
Right. But like, so take French, for example, which, they hate to admit it, but it is true that they're borrowing tons of words from English. But the thing is they're not respelling them so that they would be written in a French kind of way. And so you're essentially, now you have two different systems of spelling in the same language. I mean, one for when you're using the English words and one for when you're using the French words, but they're still pronouncing the French words in like a French kind of way. And luckily, I mean, English doesn't have to deal with that. You want to borrow from French, just write it the French way and pronounce it, rendezvous. It's fine.
Yeah. Or mutton.
Where's mutton from? I don't even know.
Isn't that French? Is that mouton?
Oh, probably. Oh, yeah, of course. That makes sense. But that one's an old one because that's from like, old French.
Probably.
I mean, yeah. So, yeah.
I mean, this is that's kind of why I always liked English. This is why it appealed to me. I just like that. It feels chaotic. Probably, I know like from a high level that it's not more chaotic than any other language, but it kind of, when you come from German, it kind of feels like that.
Well, actually, and here's something to sort of tie back to Belter a little bit. English is for a European language, a very creolized language, because what creolization is it's just regular changes that occur when you have extreme language contact. And I mean, everybody sort of knows about this language contact with English, but people don't really think about what that meant. But, I mean, in the 11th century, when all of a sudden Norman French was introduced into England, and then, you still had lots of influence from, Norse and to a lesser degree, Celtic languages, that caused English to change dramatically. I mean, it's the reason why English doesn't have the cases that were only relatively recently lost, in other Germanic languages. And so that could be the reason why it feels so different to someone coming from a Germanic language.
I think that's happening like to German right now, like the place where I come from, there for like 2 generations there've been lots of Turkish immigrants, and they're not necessarily taking words, but they're like developing their own way of speaking German. It sounds like at first it sounds like it's just an accent, but they're changing the meaning of certain words. They get a slang meaning that, like, if you're not from that area, from that kind of, from that culture background, you don't understand what they say, even if they use German words.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of those things where this is the reason why languages that are from sort of like, or the groups that have less power usually don't have necessarily as much impact, because the question is this going to survive?
Actually,
it could.
It sounds to me they don't have the power, but it's kind of like a culture thing. It feels about like it's like kind of that hip hop thing, that youth thing. It's cool. You know what I mean? It's like how lots of, like, I don't know, in the 80s, lots of English words got introduced into German because, like, of rock music and whatnot, of that culture of all the movies being cool.
I mean, that could be. I mean, of course, it's coming from, again, different angles. I mean, American culture, of course, and in the 80s was the dominant culture worldwide. I mean, it still is the dominant.
But very
culture.
much so in Germany, more dominant than in Germany even before that. It goes back to, like, after the war. Like Elvis.
Yeah.
That it was the thing. They were kind of they liberated us from the Nazis. So it was kind of it's a huge influence.
Well, but I mean, if you do have enough, like, Turkish people who want to keep themselves distinct as a group from wider German culture, then it could survive that way. I mean, you see this in America, where you have say in Los Angeles, like 4th or 5th generation Mexicans who don't speak any Spanish, but still have this, like, very particular dialect of English, which is influenced by Spanish. Because
that's the same thing, because these people don't speak Turkish, like, as well.
Right. And I mean, the question is, okay, is that it's a sociological issue. I mean, are these people going to maintain their distinct identity for long enough for that to be a separate language?
Right.
I don't know. I mean, it has happened. Look at Yiddish. Yiddish was a high Germanic language that was spoken by a subgroup that wasn't particularly powerful, but because they had strong incentives to keep themselves, a unique group, they managed to, after enough time, develop enough, a different enough form of German that it is a different language.
I love that language too. Like, if you don't speak it, you only speak German, it's just like sometimes it just brings a smile to your lips, like the, I don't know.
Well,
schlep and stuff like that. It's just, you kind of know where it's coming from.
It's funny. I mean, I know a decent amount of Yiddish, and, like, there have been times where I've spoken, or I've had discussions with Germans about how, I mean, like, there's some things which are just, like, totally, like, normal words in Yiddish that are actually kind of like bad words in German, or other cases where, like, it's a totally normal word, but it's, like, super old-fashioned and archaic sounding to German. But I wish I could remember what some of them were. We had a discussion, we figured out a bunch, but I've forgotten most of them.
This is really, really weird. I don't know. Is that happening in Britain, Dave? The Birmingham, are you developing anything except Boston?
I don't think so. But then I do have my super bland, very southern kind of take on English. So, I mean, I've ignored all the regional aspects of it.
You don't even have a Welsh accent, do you?
No, for good reason.
Only this always disappoints me. I like accent. Like, the podcast I did before this, I did with a Liverpudlian, Dan, who doesn't have a very Liverpudlian accent. That always disappointed me.
No,
Yeah.
I'm hyper bland. So we have Mike and Shah to bring the sort of interesting
Yeah.
accent.
Where you originally from, Nick?
I mean, I was raised in a variety of different places because my parents were both academics moving around a lot. But I was born in Arizona and, spent most of my time either there or in California until I was, an adult. But I also lived in France as a kid.
Huh.
But that didn't affect my English very much.
I can't specifically place your accent. I'm interested in this. I always try to do this, but yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I actually just had a discussion about this with somebody that, I have a California accent. The thing is that the California accent has absolutely taken over all of America. So everybody has a California accent now.
Except
of a certain
stereotypical people from New York.
But those people are all old.
Yeah,
you
true.
go to young people in New York. I have friends who are my generation who are born and raised in New York, and they have basically a California accent. I have a friend from Atlanta, Georgia. Her mother sounds super Southern, and then she sounds like a Californian.
It's weird. We don't have that in Germany. Like there isn't an accent that's taking over, really. The funny thing is the accent here, where I'm in Hanover, is considered like the stereotypical, like it's like SBE, like Southern British English, so people in Germany think people from here don't have an accent, which is of course wrong. They have just the accent that has established itself as being like the highbrow, I'm posh. I speak like this accent. And the area where I come from, the rural area, my accent's like the absolute, like laborers kind of thing. That's like people think you're like, I don't know, a steel worker when you talk like that.
Well, yeah, it's all about what aspects of your culture and your social standing that your society thinks are important.
Yeah, it's like it's like that prejudice thing, right? It's like that's what TV shows always. That's the whole Belter thing on The Expanse, right?
Yeah, and so for some languages or some cultures, this divide between being a rural person or being an urban person is important, and so that will show up. But in other cases, it's how much money you have or how educated you are or whether or not you like to surf.
Yeah, you're a hippie. You're from California.
Yeah, well, but that's the thing. I don't have the surfer California accent.
Just
which
say
is
dude a
distinct-
lot.
Well, I do say dude actually. Everybody says dude, but it's how you say dude and all the other things that you use, and in general, just dude. Come on, dude.
Yeah, you can completely do that. So
I can do it.
So if
I
I
just choose not to.
if I would encapsulate, so basically you're saying, learning a language isn't actually as hard as you've been led to believe in school.
Right. I would say that. I would say that. There's all the details, but I think a lot of it is just you have to go in with the right expectations. And you also have to know what you want to use it for. If you're going to use it so that you can, just order drinks in another country, then that's one thing. If you want to use it so that you can read highbrow literature, but you never care about actually having a conversation, that's another thing. And, you should also make sure to, keep an eye on your own sort of sense of, what's the word I'm looking for here? Okay, I'm just gonna have to circumlocate. So this is actually, I'm just going to make a point here. Circumlocution, like taking a long way to explain something when you don't know a word for something, is something that is an enormous generative process in creolization, because you'll have people who are, they don't necessarily know the word, and so they have to come up with a much longer way to describe it.
If you listen to the show, you know I do that all the time.
Yeah. But so when you're studying a language, you just have to make sure that you don't ever get too sort of depressed about it.
Hung up, yeah. You basically you can't get hung up on the fact that you don't know that word. You need to be flexible enough. Yeah.
I think this is one of the reasons why babies are actually really good at learning languages, because they don't care. They're not self-conscious. They're just doing the work, 12 hours every day without, yeah. So, be like a baby in that sense, but then also leverage your adult brain and find the patterns.
So I see that on your website, I'm going to link to this, under projects, you have 2 language learning articles.
Yes, and I should also write more. I will promise to do that.
I looked over this in the first one. You have a promise that interests me. You can even get rid of that weird accent if you want.
Yes,
I've been trying this for 15 years, so I guess I have to try harder. I gotta believe. My part of my problem is I can never decide what I want to go to.
Well, there you go. That is a problem, because if do you want to sound American, or do you want to sound British, or do you want to sound something in between? There's actually this old-timey accent which was developed to be something in between British and American English, like
What's
the
that called?
Mid-Atlantic accent.
What's that called?
I think it's called the Mid-Atlantic accent.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. I've heard about this. They used that on the news, right?
Yeah, it was all these. The news, and a lot of actors from the 40s and 50s would talk like that.
Oh, yes.
A couple presidents.
I think I want to go there. I think that sounds amazing.
Okay,
I could see you with like a really clipped British kind of BBC news announcer from like the 1950s. It's like,
yeah,
"Hello, I'm Fab. You are not invited to my birthday party."
Tittle pip.
Exactly. I could see you doing that.
See, I resolved to sound like Tom Hardy, and then I figured out that Tom Hardy sounds different in everything he does. You have to if you haven't seen Peaky Blinders, you have to see that. He plays a Jewish crime lord, and he has like this amazing London accent. It's great.
I think you should just do a belter accent in English.
Oh, that, yes. It sounds bloody hot when Naomi does it. That's really good. Or just do the Anderson Dawes thing.
Yeah, you should do the Anderson Dawes thing.
I like the way he pronounces animal. That's animal. Maybe I should do that. Yeah, that's good. Belter is the future anyway. We need to make this.
Yeah.
To make this the future. It's a good brand. I like it. It's
also.
Also
I have already encouraged lots of people to raise their children speaking belter.
Holy shit! What have you done? That's cool, isn't it? Like, isn't that the greatest thing when you make something and then people pick it up?
I think already somebody actually proposed to their girlfriend in belter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nerds.
Nerds.
I would have.
So cool.
I would have gotten such a no.
That is one where you really have to be sure that you know your partner.
Well, you should. At that point, you should make sure anyway. But yeah.
Also, that they know how to accept or decline
in Belgium. Yes.
Otherwise, they could look at you going, "You what, mate?"
Or if you just taught them
or that
yes.
they just understand you in the first place.
Yeah, that's a good point as well.
Although I suppose if you get down on one knee and you have you know,
If you've got a ring, there's
a
like
ring
a lot
in your hand.
non-verbal
Yeah.
context there.
Well, my wife, like I was saying, I was saying, if I'm gonna propose, I'm gonna do it in a public place. And I'm gonna do the whole get down on the knee thing. And she's like, if you get down on the knee, I'll say no. Which this is why she proposed to me.
Ah.
Very, very progressive.
Yeah.
In a chat window, I'll have you know.
Oh, wow, those Germans.
Yeah, we're nerds. We used to, when we were studying, like when we were together, like maybe 2 years, used to play World of Warcraft in the same room on the weekend, and then in game, just like go, can you make another pot of coffee?
I mean, I definitely remember in my freshman year in college, you know, I had my roommate, and you know, we were in the same room and just sitting like with our backs to each other, and we would just talk through chat because he would always play super loud music, and it wasn't worth trying to like yell over the music.
Yeah.
So there was a specific language learning question from Nick in the Discord feedback stuff, and he was saying
there? You prepared?
Yeah.
Bloody hell!
I'm on the ball, Fab. This is why you pay me the big bucks.
Who's this? This is another Nick, isn't it?
This is another Nick. We have like 3 Nicks in there. Question for Nick Farmer. What's your opinion on Duolingo? I've been using it to learn 2 languages, and it doesn't seem to be very effective, but maybe I'm the idiot in the equation. So I get the feeling you are far too like proficient at learning languages to bother with something like that. But as a kind of layperson, where do you stand?
So the thing about Duolingo is it's one of those where, I mean, it kind of, they take the opposite philosophy that I do, which is that they don't explain anything. It's just, they take this idea that you're supposed to learn the same way that you learned as, a little kid with like very little context given. You're just, having to figure it out through translation and stuff. And I think that can be super frustrating because, again, it's not leveraging all that pattern recognition that you have as an adult. So, I mean, I think Duolingo is useful if it is sort of one of the few ways that you have to kind of hear how things are pronounced. But, it wouldn't be my top recommendation. I would recommend, if you want to go that tack of not really like having a ton of stuff explained, but instead you're sort of guided through. Better than Duolingo, there's this stuff called Pimsleur, Pimsleur, and it's not written down. It's all like through recordings, but I definitely suggest that over Duolingo. The difference is you actually have to pay for it, but like most things, the better stuff you have to pay for.
Yeah, I've attempted to use it, and other than being really lazy, I found the kind of, this is incorrect. The correct thing is the thing that was like what you said, but very subtly different. But we're not going to tell you why, and you're going to have to magically infer it.
Right.
I found very frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I just on a whim decided to check out what they were doing with Welsh, and like it gets very complicated when they don't actually explain anything, or that sometimes they'll translate something and it's like in that context, yeah, it does translate as one way, but then if you in another context it translates another way, and it's really hard if you're not given any explanation to see what the commonality is between those two. So I don't necessarily recommend Duolingo unless it's like something that you're doing on top of everything else, then whatever, it's fine.
This is Simon Schuster.
Yeah.
Pimsleur. Yeah. Apparently I thought, what the hell name is that? But it's named after a scholar, apparently.
Yeah, I think the guy who developed it in the first place.
Yeah, that makes sense then. Yeah, I think I'm going to focus on getting rid of that accent and getting the accent I want.
But that's one of our like core brand things is that you're German and that I'm British.
Well, I can always go back to the.
Don't fuck it up, Fab.
I can always go back to the German accent. Yeah.
Yeah. You need to ham it up. Really.
Oh, I can ham it up. That is the only thing I could do for Hollywood. I could completely be the Nazi from those Hogan's Heroes things. Oh, I loved that show. It was in Australia, and I discovered that and watched that with an old Australian guy who was in World War II. He was always make fun of me and my accent, and that's how I learned. To appreciate how funny my accent. You know how that you have this level where you, at some point, you learn different language and you're kind of ashamed of like that you can't get rid of that accent. And I kind of learned to embrace it and how make fun of it as well. That does help.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to be able to laugh at yourself.
Yep. Especially if you speak Welsh. Bloody hell, that language. God. It's ridiculous. Do you have any more concrete questions, Dave?
I don't think so. That's the one I remember finding.
I wanted to say we do want to have Nick on again. And I promise this time we'll make it faster than last time. I just want people, if you have questions, write them to us and we'll collect them and we'll put Nick on the spot again next time.
Sounds good.
So yeah, I don't know. We usually tell people to write us on Twitter, but I think for this kind of stuff, probably GNR@sixgun.org is probably just email them, and I'll tune my filters to hopefully get them. But we also have Dave on that address, and I think Dave's a bit more up on the email stuff. I don't know. I've got 2,500 unread emails in my inbox right now. I just looked.
Wow.
I would cry. I have 0.
There are two kinds of people in the world: those who always zero out their inbox, and those who never, ever do. I'm
usually the zero out kind of guy, but I can't anymore. It's like I get too much work email. I also have the problem of, I write, for a really big website, and it's got like my email address under every news story.
Right.
So, and if you write 3 a day, you can just imagine the stuff that comes in. It's just like, whoa. But yeah, I guess do you probably get a lot of belter request emails?
Sometimes. It's amazing how rarely people actually go onto my website to then find my email. Which I guess I should be grateful for.
Don't tell anybody. Don't.
I mean, it's right there under contact.
It is actually. Yeah. Oh, you've got a newsletter. What?
Yeah. Well, not really much of a newsletter. I literally sent out the first one today.
I am now subscribing to that because I don't have enough email yet. Oh, it's a tiny letter too. You're completely on brand. Char turned me onto this as well. It's good. It's great. Now now you only need to start listening to Sabaton. Since you speak Swedish, be right up your alley.
Oh man,
that's funny. Like they have an album that is English and Swedish, and sometimes I I was driving the car, I was listening to the Swedish one again, and because I know the English words, I know what they're singing about, but it's so weird. The Swedish is so weird.
Well, there's a reason why almost all of their musicians sing in English.
Yeah, it's kind of like German. German is really like
money, right? It's definitely money.
It's definitely money.
Well, also German doesn't work for some kind of songs. You'd think it'd be love songs, but really it isn't. It's like
industrial dance.
No, it's like rock and roll. It's like really hard in German, I think.
Really hard but yeah, anything that requires pyrotechnics.
No, metal is awesome in German. I mean, like,
It's true.
that's the language is made for like
Yeah.
black metal. I mean, it's
Yeah.
made for growling. That and Dutch.
Yeah, but yeah. Somehow Spotify, the Discover Weekly stuff, it's sort of stuck in a kind of like songs that aren't in English that I don't understand, and I listen to them and I really like them. And I'm like, I have no idea what they're saying. I don't know how to pronounce the artist's name, but there's regularly lots of like German metal that I'm like, they just sound so angry. This is really good. It's good. I kind of like play a game to like see what percentage of songs have like non-English characters in them, and like it's high, very high.
I love these. That's the prejudices again, right? That other people like people don't speak German think it sounds angry.
It does.
If they're shouting, it definitely is.
That's a complete cultural thing, isn't it?
No, it's a complete cultural thing, but
That's like
it
French.
really does.
Yeah.
Nah, there's something about it where like our normal, our angry is calibrated like the way that your normal
I
is.
think it's a glottal stops, isn't it? Like,
I mean, you can have glottal stops without it sounding angry. I don't know.
Oh.
Chinese also sounds angry to me.
yeah, you're right, actually. And Japanese.
Eh,
I don't know.
I don't think Japanese sounds angry.
It sounds angry to me.
No.
Maybe that's a German thing.
But you're German, yeah.
With I don't know, weird. It's like it's weird, like French being the language of love. I've not people say that. I never thought that. It's just like it sounds snotty to me.
Yeah, well, it's like in the second Matrix movie when they meet like the French.
Oh,
characters.
yeah.
Like, I love to swear in French because it's like wiping your ass with silk.
Yeah, so the Carolingen, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't that the guy who plays Hannibal in the series? Yeah, I think.
Oh, I don't know. I haven't watched that.
Yeah, it's
Could be.
It's Matt. What's his face? Oh, God, now I have to look this up. Why did you make me?
Matt Mikkelsen?
Matt Mikkelsen, I think. Now I'll have to look it up because otherwise people will shout at us. What? Oh God! I saw you have an IMDb entry.
Yes.
That is
I do.
amazing. I'm envious once more.
I'm in the credits. If you pay attention. Actually,
Yep.
my mom, doing her mom thing, she actually paused the episode during the credit scroll, and so that she could take a picture of my name.
Oh, that's adorable.
Completely understandable. No, he wasn't played by Matt Mikkelsen.
Oh.
It's a guy called Lambert Wilson. But anyway, so yeah, it's I completely understandable. I was looking for your name in the credits as well.
So you're saying you're like my mom?
Oh, damn. I guess I am. I just like I like I don't know. I like that connection to something. And I like that. Oh, that guy. I want to talk to him on Twitter. That's cool. Makes me happy. It's awesome.
Yeah,
and I like people when people get credit for stuff they do, and then when they do good work, and then that turns up. I really like that.
That is good. That is a good attitude for society.
Yes, and we should reward people, and this is why people should buy the Survivors. Let's do that again.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll round out this show and let you go. You probably have words to invent. What are you doing currently? They're not like. Are they producing season 3? I mean, it's
but they haven't started with me yet. It's all still very early. No, today I'm going back to sleep. I have a cold. So.
Oh yeah, I will. That's a good plan. I'm going to sleep as well, but it's like 10 o'clock in the afternoon over here. Yeah, so really cool. I mean, I was really happy to see that they got season 3.
Yeah.
That show really deserves that. I can't wait to see where it's going. I'm also looking really forward to the next book a lot. Are you up to? Are you reading the books? Are you like up to?
I am not
par?
up to speed on the books, but I will probably catch up soon.
I think I have to read them again because I was watching the show and it's like they're really diverging from the books by now, or are they? I can't really remember.
You know, they diverge in some ways and not in others. I mean, the story arc is basically the same, but some of the characterizations are pretty different. Like, you know, Naomi is very different. Amos is kind of different too.
And she's revealed a lot of stuff that in the books it just only comes up like in book 5 or something.
Right.
You know, when she said she has a son.
Right.
She lost her son and stuff like that. That was like, wow, they're doing that now, aren't they? And and she said, didn't she like even in season 1 she was talking to Dawson? No, it's to Fred. She's saying to Fred, you'll have to find somebody for me. You have to do me this favor. And that's I knew what was going. I like that they throw little things in like that for people who've read the books.
Yeah,
really cool. Or when they pretended to kill what's his face, Miller's colleague. What's me with names today? Miller.
Something like that.
You know who I mean.
Remember.
And
I know who you're talking about.
They were like, it looked like they'd killed him, and he turns up later in the books, and I was like, what? And then they hadn't killed him. You're playing with my feelings, damn you. Yeah, so it was really great to have you back on. I hope
Thanks, I had a good time too.
It was a lot of fun. I'll put links to everything in the show notes, and get well soon.
Thank you.
And see you next time.
Yep.
Yeah, see you next time. Thank you.
Yep. Just let me know.
Just sign off. You have to sign off with something in Belter. Think of something.
So Belter for goodbye actually was inspired by Swedish, and it is Oye Deng.
Awesome. Completely on brand.
Yes, that's what I do.